Tell us about another Supreme Court decision where they have allowed, Scott, hold tight 1 second. Hold tight 1 second. I want to go to the Supreme Court case in North Carolina, where I've been calling them the 21st century Alabama. The Supreme Court rejected a request by state lawmakers to review a lower court ruling that found the 2011 redrawing of 28 districts as racial gerrymandering. The actions by the nation's highest court sends the matter back to the lower court, which could order new districts in time for the 2018 elections as a remedy for the Republican legislature's actions. The Supreme Court, however, rejected the lower court's order calling for redrawing the districts this year and then holding a special election. The court said that such an extraordinary step was not warranted. North Carolina's Democratic Governor Roy Cooper had this to say: whether the elections in November 2018 or earlier, redrawing the districts is good for our democracy by leveling the playing field for free and fair elections. The people should be able to choose the representatives in competitive districts instead of the representatives being able to choose the people in lopsided partisan districts. Joining us via FaceTime from Durham, North Carolina, is Alicia Brown, staff attorney for Voting Rights Southern Coalition for Social Justice. Alicia, this is a huge deal, and look, what you have been having to deal with in North Carolina sounds eerily like we're dealing with Alabama in the 1960s.
Sure, sure. And what the Supreme Court has effectively done is essentially confirm what we've known all along, which is that these 28 legislative districts here in North Carolina are unconstitutional racial gerrymanders. And, just, a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court also confirmed that the 1st and 12th congressional districts here in North Carolina are unconstitutional racial gerrymanders. And then about a month before that, the Supreme Court also refused to hear a case that came from the Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit that said that the voter ID law, the voter suppression law that was passed by the North Carolina General Assembly was also unconstitutional in that it targeted Black voters with, quote, almost surgical precision. So, this use of race in such a predominant fashion is nothing new in North Carolina. And we're just happy that the Supreme Court and the federal courts are picking up on this and shutting it down, because we have to fix it.
And look, what you have been dealing with there in North Carolina consistently are Republicans who have been trying to rig elections. The voter suppression bill they passed was one of the most onerous voter suppression laws in the entire country. Now you have this effort here. And they have been not just shameful but brazen in their attempt to exercise their power by being able to control the legislature, even trying to take away a lot of the powers of the Democratic elected governor as well.
Yes, it's very much a by any means necessary process with them. And the reality is, as you mentioned earlier, voters should be able to elect their representatives, and those representatives should be able to, move forward in the typical fashion as they normally do. And so protecting that fundamental right to vote and protecting the right to have your representatives truly represent you and what your best interests are is what we're fighting for, and obviously what we'll continue to fight for, considering that, the legislature here will move forward by any means necessary. And so we'll just have to do the same.
Alicia, I surely appreciate it. Thank you so very much, and keep up the fight.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's go back to our panel. Brandon, I want to start with you. This is another rebuke of your fellow Republicans in North Carolina. And still, I've said to you before, I still have yet to see a coalition of Black Republicans publicly come out and condemn Republicans there in North Carolina. Somebody needs to step up on your side, Brandon, and tell them in North Carolina, stop the Alabama 1960s tactics when it comes to trying to take the voting rights of people of color.
Yeah, you're 100% right, Roland. We talked about this before on the show. I agree with you 100%. I think that partisan gerrymandering, racial gerrymandering of any type is wrong. There's what happened in North Carolina, as you talked about before. There are many parts of that provision. I know you guys like to link in voter ID with everything that happened in North Carolina, but North Carolina is an outlier. They did a lot of egregious, blatantly wrong things in addition to the voter ID, which was struck down altogether. But if you look at the last election in Michigan, which does not have a strict voter ID, that had the lowest drop in black turnout of any state in the country. And so I'll push back on the voter ID part, but as far as the other provisions that were there, curtailing early voting, definitely egregious and was racially targeting. And I agree to your point. I've spoken out against it. I know several other people on your panels have spoken out against it, but I agree that the silence from the RNC has been deafening, in my opinion. I actually have a call later today with a member of the RNC to talk about this issue, because I do agree that there needs to be some statement. I think this is something that we all can agree on. Voter ID aside, that some of these restrictions put on by North Carolina are wrong. And in addition, you always talk about racial gerrymandering, which is definitely the priority getting rid of, but also any type of partisan redistricting. Right now in Maryland, there's a federal lawsuit against Democrats for using the power of their office to draw lines to help them win. In North Carolina, Republicans did it to help them win elections. It's happening all across the country on both sides of the aisle. It needs to stop. And definitely the racial gerrymandering in North Carolina, for sure.
Avis?
I think there's something that can be learned from what happened in North Carolina. Just think about when North Carolina had a Republican governor and they had Republican control of both the House and the Senate, the State House and the Senate. They went on a rampage. They specifically attacked not only voting rights as it relates to targeting African Americans, as was said, with surgical precision, but also they went after reproductive rights. Also went after the LGBT community in terms of the bathroom law. They went on a tear throughout that state. And what I think we can learn from that is that if there was actually someone that was actually competent in the White House right now, this is exactly what we'd be seeing on a national scale. We're seeing a little bit of it right now, but we're not gone exactly all the way to that extent because, quite frankly, the White House is in turmoil. So one of the things that I fear is if we end up with a President Pence, North Carolina was basically just the sort of starting plate for what we're going to see all across the country in terms of federal legislation.
And Indiana.
Absolutely.
Scott?
Yeah, Roland, we've defined the problem. The Supreme Court has rejected this gerrymandering for all the reasons our guests have said. The reality is, though, what is the cure? You know, it's interesting that the Supreme Court indicated that it wasn't clear that there was enough consideration by the lower court as to whether you had to redraw these districts and do a special election. The record just wasn't sufficient, let alone warranted. And so what will be interesting is what the lower court now in North Carolina does to remedy this. Do they just hold regular elections at the midterms in 2018 and in the interim focus on the redistricting piece? They clearly cannot use race as a dominant factor in how they redraw these districts. But I think it's interesting that the Supreme Court left it to the lower court to figure out an alternative to holding these special elections that can be expensive as well as time consuming. I hope that they still do this vis-a-vis the special elections, and if not, I hope they are able to redraw these districts in time for the 2018 elections, midterm.
A peaceful protest turned deadly. 37-year-old black man was shot and killed by Baton Rouge police. His hands are in the air, and you still get shot by the cops.
Oh my God, please don't tell me he's dead.
We're not going to let hate define us.
Race is a big part of this.
If truly all lives matter, then all lives need to matter equally.
What we require is action. What we require is accountability. We understand that black lives do matter, and we will keep focused on this issue.
NewsOne Now, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.